And welcome back. We have been chilling in the J-11 the last few days, and this thing is still a bit of a mixed bag. Now the flight performance is better than in the Su-27 video that I released a little bit ago. The Su-27 still has the better flight performance than this thing, they just both have been changed. This thing is a bit heavier and you do feel it, but it's not too major as the flight performance isn't the main selling point of this plane anyway. On low fuel you can dogfight some of the planes in the raster, something like the F-16C for example, but this does have to mean that either they make a lot of mistakes or that they are not running low fuel themselves. Now this thing doesn't burn too much fuel, so you can get away with running a lower amount, but the flight performance in general, it's a bit of a MiG-29 SMT plus. It's better, and as you can tell in the background, my missiles are just going for the wrong targets, but I'm getting kills, so I am not going to be complaining. The main issue with this thing is that you want to keep people at range, because once you get past the head-on or once you get people on your 6, you are going to struggle, and you can fall back on the R-73 with the HMD in a dogfight, but if they merge properly you are not even going to get a singular missile off, and if you do, very likely that they are going to be pre-flaring it. Luckily most of your enemies at top tier have no idea what they're doing, and thus your missiles will be able to carry your plane for you. The main strength is of course 16v16. There's people absolutely everywhere, and there's a very big chance that whoever you are launching at either doesn't know how to defeat the missile, or they straight up don't see it because they are occupied with 12 other people directly on the screen. So it's very likely that people just get missiled out of nowhere. Let's play a little bit of a game. Guess which times Sweden was on my team and guess when they were on their team. I'll give you a hint. They were on my team about 2 times. The Gripen is currently still completely busted, and I don't want to hear it that it's just player skill, minor nations just know how to play the plane, you just don't know how to fight it. Well, it's funny that the Gripen players all end up doing much better than they do in any other plane. It just perfectly fits the meta, and it's really ruining the enjoyment of top tier for me. You can say that it's not great at BVR, and you'd be correct, but all you really have to do is just stay on the deck, and that missile will never hit you. And then we have the argument about the F-15 being at 12.3 and it being justified. At the very least, at the absolute very least, it's better than the MiG-29 SMT. And you cannot tell me it isn't, because that thing only has 6 missiles and the flight performance of that thing is absolutely non-existent. The F-15 has fantastic flight performance, and the real reason these things keep getting down tiered or not getting up tiered is because people like this. People that just fly straight in and headbutt a missile. And that is of course the main strength of this plane. And I try to stay around 5.5 kilometers. I try to not get contrails on my engines because it just gives everyone a massive I am here beacon that they can shoot at. So staying a little bit lower makes it so that they really don't see you. And it gives you a little bit of an element of surprise. Of course at these ranges BVR is a bit of a gimmick, and if the enemy knows how to defeat your missile, you are never gonna be connecting any of these. But I'm just showing you this because a lot of people just don't know how to dodge them, and that is how you are gonna be getting a lot of kills. There's a second thing to this, and that is there is simply too many people on the map. We have 16v16 and your friendlies ping your RWR, your enemies ping your RWR, and at some point you just get locked from every direction and you don't know whether it's actually coming for you, whether it's bleed through, whether it's just some random AA on the ground. If you have an older radar or an older RWR, you can't even tell what's shooting at you, and you don't even get a launch warning. You just know when you are being locked on, and this makes it very hard to actually appropriately reply to missiles coming your way. And that's exactly what makes this plane, I'm not gonna say so good, but what makes it so effective. There is simply so much clutter on the map that whoever you are shooting at is so preoccupied with something else that they just end up collecting the missiles. And I dropped 2 ETs from the heavens here, and if that F-16 hadn't shot a missile, that second ET also would have connected, but he kind of flared it with his missile, so to speak. But this plane is a missile bus, and there is really not much more to it. The flight performance is okay on low fuel, as I said, but the main thing is your missiles. Right here in this head-on, I shoot first, I shoot down, so my missile is gonna beat his missile towards the target, and he's forced defensive, and because he goes defensive, his missile can't keep tracking. I drop in, shoot an R-73, it doesn't actually track, and we are just gonna turn into the next F-16, and you can tell, at higher speeds it's okay at maintaining it. The issue comes from going below Mach, or below like 0.995-ish, and then you really just start bleeding all of your speed instantly. So if you are getting pressured, this thing is pretty rough. And if you haven't watched my SU-27 video, it mainly comes down to the fact that you surprise people, you overwhelm people, and that's how you get kills, that's how it's effective. But if you play against people that know what they are doing and it's maybe a 1v1, there is very little you can do. Luckily 1v1s don't really happen because, well, you always have 6 enemies that are blue ready to shoot you down. And in this case he is 2 kilometers behind me while I'm shooting at someone 2 kilometers ahead of me. So we open the chat, we wish him a Merry Christmas, we wish him the best life ever, and I hope that he succeeds at everything he will ever do in his life, because that's the only thing we use a chat for. It's definitely not a toxic cesspool, only positive vibes down here. Or up here I should say, because we are back at 4.5 to 5 kilometers and we are just gonna be raining down our 27 ERs. Now once you get pressured, you need to make sure that you are locating where the missile is coming from, and at these altitudes it's pretty easy to do. And if you see that the missile is actually coming for you, you need to start doing something. You need to start notching, cranking, snaking, doesn't really matter what you are doing. You need to make sure that it doesn't hit you, because at these altitudes it's actually pretty difficult to dodge the missile outright without bleeding it of energy. The nice thing about sitting up here is that once you clear the people that are actually climbing, or people like this F-16 that just dive straight in, you kind of have free reign, and then you can drop in from above. And as we saw in the intro clip, if you shoot from above, most people aren't really gonna be paying attention to you. So we shoot that missile off, it's an R-73, it connects, and that is 2 people out of the map in a singular dive essentially. I'm gonna start turning into the F-16 because I don't want to get singled out. I want to stay somewhat near my team. I did go kind of away from my team, I kind of spaced myself out. I call this desynchronizing. I cover this quite often in my other videos, where you want to be with your team but you don't want to be in the same place. So you either want the enemy to turn for you and then they give your entire friendly team the 6 of them, or you want them to go for your team and then you get their 6. And once you get close enough on their 6 or in a blind spot with a 27 ET, you just end up getting pretty free kills. Now we notice that this F-16 is coming in and we are about to get locked up. Now I'm gonna try to lock him up, but this radar is kind of finicky and it lost me some time, so I shoot second. What I do now is I dump my speed, because when I go slower and I turn out, it takes his missile longer to reach me, and he just slams it right in the head on. He just keeps flying straight at the missile, and my missile just flies straight. My missile also has of course the advantage because it's an ER and it has more acceleration, more speed, but he's shooting down on me and he was going faster than us, so the launch trajectory, or however you want to call it, was actually at my disadvantage. But because we cranked it, we lost some speed, the missile took longer to reach us, we kept it right on the gimbal limit, we kind of broke it last second, but then the missile was close enough and it will just keep flying straight. And because the F-16 didn't try to dodge it, the missile just knows where it is and it probably just slammed directly into him without even having the proxy. And this time around we weren't really able to go BVR mode because there's a lot of terrain and I was getting pressured. I had to go low, I had to defend, and now we are low in the terrain, and low in the terrain is something that this plane can also do decently because you just have so many missiles, and the missiles are very good at closer ranges because of course the R-73 has some massive thrust vectoring gimmick. That is that shit right there. Absolutely beautiful, and this is why I prefer the R-73s over the AIM-9M. Now I do think that the AIM-9M has better flare resistance and it's better for like orbital striking, but I just really like being able to helmet mounted display something and the missile cranking 90 degrees off bore side to just kind of send someone back to the hangar. Now we crit this F-16, I hit this engine I think, and I very much took one of his elevators off. So I thought, well, I'm just gonna play this a little bit longer because I'm not in a trajectory right now where I can actually pull directly into him. It's a bit of a bad merge, and because he was going much slower he ends up being behind us, and because it's an F-16 he actually has quite good acceleration, which means that he might actually be able to reel it in. But he's severely crippled, so I'm just gonna turn after him. I do reverse him after like 1 or 2 turns. The issue is just the ground is pretty low and he just ends up eating it. So after he dies we are gonna try to accelerate towards my friendly here in the JS-39. He's in a 2v1 against 2 F-15s and he's already pretty slow because he was fighting someone else beforehand, and he's not really able to get his speed back up, and those 2 F-15s are actually maintaining their speed and running trains on him. So it's very hard for him to break free, so I'm gonna try to get over there as quickly as I can, because I really don't want to fight two F-15s that are up to speed in a 2v1 when they are both paying attention to me, because that makes it very hard for me to really do anything. So I'm just gonna launch these two ETs off in the hope that they don't know that I'm coming, and I'm gonna break off a little bit. I'm gonna just kind of crank it, but they're not really shooting at me yet. I'm trying to go somewhat defensive, but they're not launching on me just yet. The other F-15 is flying straight at me, and my missile will definitely reach him first because he's going much slower than us. And yes, this is a bit of a different scenario as the one where I slowed down, because I still gave my missile the speed of my aircraft when I launched it, and then I slowed down. If you are very slow on the launch, the missile is going to take a while before it reaches me, apart from the all the way around. So I didn't really need to do anything there, because he was so slow that my missile would reach him about a minute before his missile would even be halfway, so I'm really in no danger at all. The issue is though, if he goes low to the deck and he dodges the missile by simply multipathing, that game would have looked a little bit differently. Now yes, I probably would have still killed the older F-15 on the right, because he was basically stalled out and he was too busy being greedy, and he really wanted to kill that Gripen, and that's what caused the demise. If he went for me, if he defended himself and then merged with me and then went into a dogfight, I would have had to run away because he was simply too slow. He would have got inside of me, he would have sit on my 6 because he's going slower. And in the long term he will then get his energy back up, because guess what? It's an F-15 and that thing has a lot of power, and it will claw back that energy discrepancy, especially when your opponent is a J-11. Now they didn't do that, so I got 2 free F-15 kills, and again, another reason why that thing is still 12.3. We are getting locked up, so we are gonna just kind of break off. I'm not gonna contest that. I'm kind of just hoping that he loses interest, and I'm gonna keep my eyes on that guy that's in low alt orbit. And after a little bit, I'm just gonna turn around. Pulse Doppler lock also breaks, but it might be in my dead zone, so I need to keep an eye on it. But I'm not getting picked back up. There it is for a second, but then it breaks. So for now we are in the clear, and we are gonna lock up this. I'm not sure what it is, but he's at altitude and he's kind of notching us already. And that means one thing. He knows that we're here, so I'm gonna lock him up. I'm gonna break the lock, and I'm just gonna send an ET his way. And because he probably thinks that this is an ER, he's gonna turn out. However, by turning out, you do something that a heat-seeking missile very much enjoys. And that's a hot-ass afterburner pointing directly at the seeker head. Now these mind games don't work all that often. I think I made it work like 3 out of 9 times. But when you are below someone, it doesn't get a spot. They don't really know, and they might just think that you are just trying to shoot off the R-27ER. Unlock them, let the missile keep flying, and then lock them last second so that the missile retracts and then still ends up killing him. Now you can do this of course with a bit of a dual fire where you shoot an ET and an ER at the same time, and they don't really know how to defend it, because then when they go sideways or they fly away from it, if they try to go cold, the ET will just absolutely slam them. And if they try to flare it by pulling into it, they just end up pulling directly in the ER. Now most of the time they will try to break out because they get a radar lock and they know that there is a launch warning, so they think it's just 2 ERs. And the second they break radar lock, you can just turn it off yourself. They mostly just ignore the missile because they think they have defeated it. Another nice thing about the 27s is when you miss someone, just like right there, you can simply lock up someone else and the missile will continue to go on. And this window is pretty big. This F-15 kind of got done dirty because there's no real way to react to this. You've seen it in the first clip as well. It happens sometimes. It's not a massive thing, but it's definitely beneficial. And you can also use this to, of course, kind of stealth fire missile people across the map. Now we get locked on in the head-on here and we kind of lose control. And we do kill him. And then we totally survive, just like this guy right here doing the Cobra. Everyone is doing the Cobra today. And the effectiveness is portrayed quite well by these people. So we are back at altitude and we are gonna do our usual thing. We are just gonna try to keep everyone at arm's length. Want to make sure that we have the advantage when it comes to the missile jousting. And you do most of the time in this thing because, well, the ERs are just absolutely disgusting. JS-39 on the deck, and it's really that easy. If you fly too high, you are gonna get hit by this missile. And yes, if you are gonna use these examples, you can say that the Gripen is easy to defeat. But any plane that flies at that kind of altitude in a perfectly straight line when I'm diving directly on top of you is gonna die. And this game I'm actually running 6 ERs because I just wanted to see if it's maybe a little bit more convenient because you have less missile groups. Because as you might know, you have 2 groups with 2 R-73s, and with the ETs you have 4 missile groups, which is just an absolute pain in the ass to actually cycle through. But this also means that we can kind of just sling them off at whoever we feel like. With something like the MiG-29 you need to use them sparingly, because you only have 2. And 2 is like just on that number where it's just enough for most games, but you don't really have anything to spare if you end up missing them. Whereas if you run 4 or even 6, you can kind of just use them at whoever you want, and if they aren't really paying attention, you get a free kill. And if they are paying attention, you didn't really waste anything because you have 5 more anyway. So we shoot a third R27 ER and he ends up dying. So we break lock, try to make it go for the JS39, but we were just too late and the missile hits the ground, so we are going to shoot another one. And after all of this, I still have 2 left. Now this guy goes low enough and you can tell that the missile just doesn't track, it doesn't do anything. Second guy does it as well. Multipathing people, it is really that easy to dodge some radar missiles. Now you do want to be careful with something like a Phoenix, because that thing has so much splash range that you still might up ending eating it, or at least the shrapnel from the ground that flies up into your plane. So you want to be a little bit more cautious with that. But when you get shot by AIM-7s or R27s, all you really have to do is just stay low to the ground and the missile can't really do anything. Now we have 3 guys in front of us. We have a Viggen and 2 Gripens. So I want at least one of these Gripens dead for very obvious reasons. Now he's not paying attention. I'm behind him and the missile does its thing. Now we have the Gripen and the Viggen directly next to each other, and because we are still quite fast, we are able to kind of turn inside of them. Now I'm gonna cut throttle a little bit to slow down slightly to make sure that we aren't going too fast and we can actually turn around in time, because I don't want this guy to get away from us because we have a massive turning circle. Now we lock him up with the radar and he's a little bit too low, so you can tell that the radar is kind of tripping balls. And in this case the missile does a 9/11 and it doesn't end up getting anywhere close to him. We're gonna try that again. I'm gonna lock him up again. The slaving here makes it so that it's a little bit easier for the missile to keep track of the enemy plane once it's on the rail, so it knows exactly where to go when I launch it. And at this kind of range, if you wait for the periodical flares, you should wait for the pop, and after you pass the missile, you kind of just shoot it at an angle, and the rest is history. It's really that easy. If people are flying perfectly straight and the flares don't actually get in between the missile and the afterburner, the flares are not gonna be doing much, even though you might have 3000 in the air. It doesn't matter if the seeker never ends up actually seeing them. And then we have another Gripen. And what can I say other than you should be a little bit lower than that. Thank you for watching and you'll see me in the next one.